For the ones who work hard to ensure their crew can always go the extra mile, and the ones who get in early so everyone can go home on time, there's Grainger, offering professional-grade supplies backed by product experts so you can quickly and easily find what you need. Plus, you can count on access to a committed team ready to go the extra mile for you. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
You are listening to the Hiking Radio Network, where we talk the walk with shows by hikers, about hikers, for everybody.
I'm wondering if you'd go wandering with me through the wilderness and woods to where the winds are blowing free, through the darkness of the night.
Welcome to the Jester Section Hiker Podcast, where we talk about the continual pursuit of the section hiker.
And I'll spread the word, and you beat the drum. We'll round up the troops and get the gang to come. And we'll leave the streets and these neighborhoods, head over the river and through the woods.
Welcome back to the podcast, everybody. You are listening to Jester Section Hiker, the premier podcast with the spotlight on section hikers. And I'm your host, Julie Jester Gayhart. I think you are really going to enjoy today's guest on the show. I am pretty sure you are going to recognize who this gentleman is. But with that being said, I think you will also realize he is not heard from as much as he should be. I promise you guys are not going to be disappointed with this one. Thanks for coming back to the podcast, and now on to our guest. All right, everybody, welcome back to the podcast. And today's guest, I am extremely excited to introduce him to you all. And I was kind of in a quandary trying to figure out how to introduce this gentleman. So I'm going to introduce him from his own words. And I added a couple words in here because some things have changed. So our guest on the podcast today is a former high school teacher living in Asheville, North Carolina. He loves being a dad, husband, reading, trail running, drinking good beer, listening to Americana music, and watching UNC Tar Heel basketball. During the summers, he loves to hike long-distance trails with his record-setting wife, Jennifer Pharr Davis. Please welcome with me to the podcast, Brew Davis.
Thanks, Julie.
All right, Brew. All right, Brew. Thank you for coming on the podcast. I really, really appreciate it. And the first thing I want to talk to you about is this book that you wrote called 46 Days, Keeping Up with Jennifer Pharr Davis.
Yeah. I wrote it in 2011 now, which we were just talking about before going live. Feels like an eternity ago. A lot has changed since then. A lot of good changes, but a lot has changed.
A lot of good changes. And just so people know, that was the author intro about the author on the back cover of the book. And it does not do Brew justice because Brew is also I think you've supported Jennifer a couple times on some record-breaking attempts. You are also section hiking the Appalachian Trail yourself. You guys have also gone out of the country and done some hiking. You're an ultra runner. You're now a father and all that wonderful stuff. And we're going to get into that. And you're also a musician. And we're going to talk about that as well.
Yeah, it was funny hearing that intro because I was thinking, man, a lot, even with the bio, a lot has changed since then. Like, there's quite a few differences from what I wrote down, whatever year that actually came out, maybe 2012 or so. But yeah, I look forward to digging into all that stuff.
Well, I added former high school teacher because it actually says in the book that you were teaching high school in Asheville. And I think at the time, I don't know if you were a father yet. So I added that on there.
Yeah, I was trying to think of that too. Certainly when the book came out, well, when I was writing what would become the book, that was when Jen was hiking the Appalachian Trail. And we weren't thinking about being parents yet. So Yeah, that would have come later. Charlie was born in our daughter Charlotte, is now 7.5. She'll be 8 in November. And so she was born in 2012. Is that right? Yeah, 2012. So her birthday is 11/13/12. So that's how it's easy to remember, because you just reverse those last
okay.
two numbers. Yeah, so it would have been a little bit after she was born, or before she was born, rather.
So listen, there are many reasons I wanted to have you on the podcast, but one of the main reasons is I think podcasters are, or YouTubers, or, social media in general, are always quick to, oh yes, let's have this person on that broke the record, or, oh yes, let's have this person on that did this amazing feat. But I am also enamored by the people that help people do these amazing feats.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I really appreciate in your book, the 46 Days Keeping Up with Jennifer Pharr Davis, is you actually say in here that you also had to invest in the feat itself. So not only did Jennifer have to invest in breaking the record on the trail, but you had to invest in that. And your days were driving and going to the store and doing laundry. And a lot of the book is about you crunching numbers and all the behind the scenes stuff that I actually don't think gets talked about enough. And that is exhausting for somebody to do that, for somebody to break a record. So talk to us about that, Brew. Tell us what that's like. I mean, it's got to be exhausting, but invigorating at the same time.
Yeah, it was. And, I think everything looks different when you're looking back on it, and you've got 2 kids and chickens, and like you got a different profession, and I've covered a lot more miles, and I think besides the music stuff that when you're reading off the back cover of that book, the other thing that's changed is, like you said, I'm a section hiker now, and I've done over half the trail, and almost 2/3 of the trail. And so you look at it differently. I think one of the things that's really funny to me is when Jen, I guess it was maybe 3 years ago now. We live in North Carolina, and like you, and the Mountains of Sea Trail runs across the state, east to west, or west to east, depending on which trailhead which terminus you start at. And Jen was asked to hike the Mountains of Sea Trail for the 40th anniversary of that, as a kind of a promotional tour sort of thing, and giving talks along the way. And we signed up for it. And then after we signed up for it, we had Gus, our son, who's almost 4, and will be 4 in September. And that hike, the first full day on the trail, we were over in Cherokee, North Carolina, and I had to get rushed in the middle of the night to the emergency room because I was having chest pain, and it wasn't a heart attack. It was a different thing where the fluid around your heart gets infected, and it can kill you if it goes untreated. So it was a serious thing. And then for the next 4 months, or 3.5 months, I was taking medicine to treat that. I was watching Charlie and Gus for 10 hours a day without being at home, without any real consistent help. My mom came over and helped us a time or two. And, and so Jen asked me after the fact. It was really difficult. It was difficult for both of us. It was difficult for Jen because it was difficult for me. But at some point she said, well, I just like, which was harder, like supporting me on the Appalachian Trail record or doing this Mountains of Sea Trail thing? And I said, I would do the Appalachian Trail record 100 times again before I would do the Mountains of Sea Trail once, because it was, it was so challenging, but it was so simple. Like it was just trying to put yourself in a mind frame of support, like complete support for somebody else. And that's a really, like, it requires some humility, or just some like ability to get to see the lay of the land with reasonable eyes, and understand like who you are and who this person is that you're supporting. But when you do,
well, I actually think it's a very unique quality, Brew. I don't think everybody can do that. Not everybody can do that.
No, I think you're right. And I think, you have to, yeah, I agree with that. I mean, there's certain qualities, but I also think that it was something that, yeah, I mean, it fit my skill set, and in a way, it's funny because I'm still doing the same sort of thing now, just not on the trail every day. So Jen is the one that's out front. She's the one that's, so to speak, like hiking. She gives talks, she's writing books and articles, she's giving interviews more than me, which is, thank you so much for having me, because it is fun to give an interview every now and then. But
well, I got to tell you, like I said, I am fascinated by the people that are behind the scenes, because a lot of things, sometimes things don't work if you don't have people behind the scenes.
Right. And you have to have the right people behind the scenes, and it's all got to fall into place. And the people that are doing that sort of thing, I don't know. I think you can mess up, and it destroys everything. And so there is a lot of pressure, but it was a lot of fun, and it was fairly simple. I mean, I would drive to the road crossings and meet Jen, and then have food, or, fresh socks, or, sunscreen, or bug spray, or, blister, second skin, or whatever for her.
Did you just kind of have to tell yourself, okay, no matter how she shows up, you've got to be the same person? Because, you don't know what mood she's going to show up in, if she's going to be happy, if she's going to be mad, if she's going to be like, I'm not doing this anymore. Like, how do you frame your mind to take care of her when she shows up?
Yeah, you definitely, I think I studied communications in college, like interpersonal communications, and I was a history communications double major at UNC, and the interpersonal side of things was kind of like, I don't know, so much of it's a lot of common sense, but a lot of people don't have that common sense with communications, and I think so it played to my strength. But being an intuitive person is really helpful with this sort of thing, and knowing what needs to be said, when to push, and encourage somebody with kind of tough love, and when to be really sympathetic and let her cry on my shoulder. But it really was just like this manifestation of our relationship, and it was a younger relationship then. I mean, we'd only been married for 3 years, and now we've been married 12, but it's a lot of the same themes and same scenarios that, I mean, Jen's said, and for years, almost a decade now, in a lot of her talks, she says the trail is a metaphor for life. And being a support person on an FKT is, for me, very similar to trying to help her get speaking engagements, and kind of acting as her booking agent, and watching the kids when she's out in California, or South Dakota, or New York, or wherever she's speaking, and helping her with the hiking company. And she reciprocates, like she helps me and watches the kids when I am playing music, but it's on a different, it'd be fun. I mean, when we were talking earlier, and you said, like, how do you, so often people refer to me as like Jennifer Pharr Davis's husband.
Yeah, I didn't want to say that, Brew, but we'll bring that.
And it doesn't bother me at all. But maybe someday, if I'm a musician, then she'll be, in the music world, she might be Brew Davis's wife, and people. But yeah, I think just being a support person, part of that is just being a good partner, and knowing your role, and knowing your strength and the other person's strength. And I think what Jen and I have always tried to do is go kind of, not just like go where the action is, but like recognize, okay, well, here's an opportunity for you, or here's an opportunity for Jen to do something special, so I'm going to support her in that. Or here's an opportunity for Brew to do something special, and she supported me for that. And we are very fortunate to have the type of work, less so now during COVID, because it's just changed so much, but still have the type of work that, and the flexibility to do what we want to do, and pick the stuff that we want to do.
And I think right now, one of the things you're talking about too is you guys have the Blue Ridge Hiking Company. And are you still the booking agent and things like that for that? Or are you engrossed in the hiking company as well, just more behind the scenes kind of thing?
Yeah, I'm still doing bookings, and it feels like so what is it? Today is July 30th. So it's been, since mid-March that everything kind of went off the rails, and nobody has given any in-person presentations the way that Jen is used to, and she's had dozens of them canceled. And what's happening, I think, now is people are sort of getting the lay of the land a little bit and saying, all right, well, we're probably not going to have an in-person talk, for a while, because even if the governors open them up, people are not going to feel comfortable coming out. And so it at least gives everybody a little bit more certainty and understanding, like, well, now we're looking at virtual presentations, and that's good, because at least what what the situation is. But I'm still doing that. I have started working in the shop more. We've got a shop in downtown Asheville, and I love working in the shop. I've only done it twice now, but it is so much fun. It's like, I used to, when I was in college, I waited tables, and I remember, like, I'd have like a 6-hour shift that would just feel like 45 minutes passed, and it's a lot like that. Like, people come into the shop and you talk to them, or the phone rings, or, I mean, it's just a constant thing. And sometimes that's tough when you feel like you're under the gun and you've got a deadline for some office work, but for the most part, it's just a blast. And so I love doing that. I'm starting to guide more with the hiking company, and really just kind of get more. We've been trying to figure out for a while now what role, like, would I have more of a role with the hiking company, or am I going to try to do more music stuff? The music stuff is still there, but I think COVID has, musicians are really getting hit hard, and that's been tough. And so I've seen that, and I've been writing a lot, and I probably will record a kids album actually later this year. But I'm just, you kind of, like, I don't know if see the writing on the wall is quite the right expression, but there's more stability, and we're so much farther along with what Jen's done that for right now it makes sense to put our eggs in that basket and focus on that.
Well, let's talk about your singing a little bit, and your musicianship, I guess I'll call it, and your style of music, because you titled it yourself, I think, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your particular style. What did you name it?
I just call it I call it Brewgrass, which doesn't, I mean, I don't, there's no, that it's not like I've created a new genre. That's just a fun name. It's just like, it's just a fun name that what it is just like a glorified dad joke, which is what I'm all about. Because I'm just like corny as, I'll get out.
Well, let's not downplay your music now, Brew. You do have 2 albums.
Yeah.
One is self-titled, Brew Davis.
Yeah.
And I think the other one, and sadly, because of COVID-19, your second album is Another Scarecrow Learning to Fly. Is that correct?
Yeah, learning how to fly. Yep.
And I think you were just getting ready to go. Maybe you had done some touring with that. So talk to us about your music, where you were going with that, how important that is to you.
So I'll back up just a minute. I worked at a record label in Durham right out of college. It was called Sugar Hill Records, and it's one of the preeminent kind of independent roots record labels in the country. It's been around since the 70s and had a really great roster of artists. So I worked there for a while and didn't play music until really, I didn't start playing guitar until college. I started messing around with it just a little bit, and then would like pick it up for a few months and then put it away for a year and a half and then pick it up more. And it did that for a long time, and really didn't play at all when I started teaching 14 years ago. But then when we were coming back from one of Jen's book tours in 2013, I think it was, maybe 2014. It was 2014. I told Jen, we were in Wyoming, and I was like, I'm going to try to write a song. And when we get home, and the first song I wrote, I was like, wow, this is good. Like, I kind of got goosebumps a little bit, and have a good gauge of, I would say I've got good music taste because I listened to it for a long time. And Americana music, which is kind of really, the term Brewgrass to me is like Americana. It's like bluegrass leaning Americana music. The second album, Another Scarecrow Learning How to Fly, is a lot more there's more sort of rock on it, I would say, than the first one, but it's still, I don't know. And that the nice thing about Americana is it can be whatever you want it to be, because it just runs a gamut, and it's just music that maybe you don't hear on the radio as much unless you're listening to a college station or something. But yeah, I really love writing songs. I do think, you know, I heard a songwriter who I love one time say, you can always improve as a songwriter, but to some extent you either have it or you don't. And, you know, I'm not saying I'm not Bob Dylan or, you know, all of these.
No, you're Brew Davis. Come on.
Yeah. But I also think, like, you know, sometimes I don't know. I do think, like, I've got an ear for it. And, I was really lucky, and I went to an all boys school in Nashville called Montgomery Bell Academy. And their English department was like a big emphasis. They really wanted us to learn how to write and to read poetry and to know poetic devices like alliteration and iambic pentameter and things like that. And that comes in really handy with songwriting. And I'm not trained at all musically, and I just have to figure, that's a handicap pretty big time. But the nice part is, in the genre that I'm in, it's not like, you know, classical or jazz or something that's like really heady stuff. It's like, well, what sounds good? Like, if you find a melody and you're like, oh, that's a cool melody. Well, what does that make? How does that make me feel? Well, it makes me feel kind of like a sunrise. And then I write, you know, so that's how I pick the chorus or whatever. Like, it's a really easy thing to put words to, because it's based on feeling. And, so that's good. But I've got a lot of friends who are really outstanding musicians and songwriters, and it's been fun to get to play with them. And I feel I like kind of ache for them right now, because, you know, not just like from a financial standpoint. Why I'm saying this is because if any of y'all that are listening, if you know musicians that are you're friends with, or, you know, in your town or whatever, try to support them in whatever way you can. If they're playing stuff on Facebook or whatever, because they need not just like the financial side of it, but the emotional side of it. Like, musicians are used to playing for people, and you can't feel it as much through a screen. But there's a real give and take that
right. There's only so many Zoom concerts you can do, and then it's like, okay, they need the crowd and, you know, stuff like that. Yeah.
And, you know, one of my friends, and I used to live in Switzerland, and he sent me an email the other day and just said, man, I've loved listening to your album, and it's got so much variety. And he just kind of went on and on for a little bit about how much he liked it. It meant so much. It was so encouraging just to hear him say that.
Right.
Because I haven't had, you know, a lot of conversations recently about it.
Well, I got to tell you, you know, I'm totally bummed, because you were supposed to be here. Jennifer came, and I don't think you were feeling good. It was like the last pre-COVID event here in Charlotte.
I might have had COVID. Like, honestly, I had been in Carborough the night before, and I hadn't been feeling good for several days. So you just be glad, Julie, because if I'd come, I could have given it to you if we'd. But yeah, I know exactly.
Well, that's true.
So the thing at Blue Blaze did you go to that?
Yeah, the thing at Blue Blaze Brewery, you were going to play before, and Jennifer was going to speak. And so, I mean, the crowd was like totally bummed. We were like, wait a minute, where's Brew? So yes, Brew, we need you to come back out with your music. I think that would be great. But there's also some other things that you do. And you mentioned that you started section hiking the Appalachian Trail. So we know you have a love for the trail and hiking. So talk about kind of how all that got started.
I married into it. Is the simplest way to say it. I mean, I always loved hiking. I grew up playing, you know, basketball and tennis, and I was pretty, I don't know, middle of the road, not just like athletically, but as far as my interests were concerned. You know, I wasn't a great off the charts athlete, but I wasn't real interested in the outdoors until I guess by the time I was in college, I started kind of, you know, it's almost like I've told a lot of teenagers that we've hiked with recently who are a little bit like, I don't know if I like this outdoor thing. it's kind of like coffee, it's like an acquired taste. Like you get older and more mature, and then you're like, what? Or maybe coffee's a bad example if people don't, but whatever an acquired taste is, like,
Right.
I used to not like, I don't know, cherry cobbler, and now it's incredible, or whatever. Like, so I think when I was in college, I would drive back and forth from Nashville to Chapel Hill, and I would drive on I-40 through the mountains. And I really wanted to, right then I was kind of like, wow, I want to live in the mountains. And I spent, when I was a teacher, every summer for the first 2 or 3 summers, I would go out west and go camping and backpacking in national parks, but not long distance hiking. Like this was like, I would do like day hikes and then camp out either in the campgrounds that had all the hookups and stuff. I never did.
Yeah, you do like base camp stuff
Yeah.
and leave from the campground and come back kind of thing. Yeah.
So it was great. And I felt wild, but I didn't really know, how intense it could be. And then, when I met Jen and we got married, and the first summer she did the women's FKT on the Appalachian Trail. And then the second summer we hiked the Colorado Trail. And that was my first through hike. I just loved it. Like I drank the Kool-Aid and never really looked back. And I think it is really neat. It just makes me, it kind of warms me up to think about how, like, working with Jen now at the hiking company, like all of this stuff, who would have thought like 10 years ago, or 12, 15 years ago, like this is what I'd be doing. But, I really love hiking. And I love through hiking, and the section hiking has been really interesting because I started it maybe 6 years ago or thereabouts, and probably have done a couple 100 miles a year. A lot of it has been solo, and I do it a lot of times out of season, just because one, I don't know, it's nice to hike in the spring or fall when it's not quite as hot and crowded. And but when I go, I usually go, I've almost always hiked by myself. And that's it's kind of weird, honestly, because it's almost like a monastic like thing, like a silent retreat. And what I've found is that I love the hostels. I love going into trail town, like the balance. Like it struck me this last time I was hiking in Virginia. And of course, this past, everything this year has been crazy because of COVID, and there's not many people at all on the trail. So there isn't that vibe that, the community kind of feel. But what I realized was, like, part of the reason why I just miss, like there's an imbalance. Like I think part of the trail, I think it's like you go out there and you want, you've got an expectation or what you like. And maybe, you either, if you're used to section hiking solo, then that's great. And but if you're used to hiking with someone else, and then you go solo, then there's kind of a void there. And I think what I realized is, like, the first 3 big through hikes that I had were all with Jen. I hiked the Colorado Trail, or the first summers that I did that stuff, I hiked with Jen on the Colorado Trail. Then we spent 2 summers hiking in Europe, and we hiked, the first summer we did the Tour de Mont Blanc and a trail in Wales called the Pembrokeshire Coast Path and the West Highland Way, and the GR20 in Corsica, which is a great trail, but it's really tough. And then the next summer we did the Lagavulgur Trail in Iceland, and then we did a much longer trail across the Pyrenees in Spain, from coast to coast. And so I really got, like, into this groove of being with Jen and getting to hike with Jen. And I haven't ever gotten to do that with her on the Appalachian Trail.
That's interesting. That's really, that's very interesting.
It's like a totally different, like, if you asked me what is hiking 6 years ago, before I ever started section hiking, I would have given you this answer that was like not entirely, but like at least 50% of my answer would have been, well, I do it with my wife, and we have these conversations for part of the day, and then we spend time alone for part of the day, or like I sing to her or whatever. And now it's like, if you say, well, what does your hiking experience look like? I would say, well, I'm with our kids so much during the school year and it's so busy. And then when I go out, by myself on the AT, I'm really by myself, like probably 80-90% of the time. And then if I'm lucky, then I really long for that like community and to make some connections. And so then I'll go to the hostels and hang out and kind of have these like connections with people. But a lot of it is solo. And that's cool too. Like it's, but I'm looking forward to the day when I get to hike with Jen again. And to be fair, like, part of the reason why I do it solo is because I'm kind of a particular hiker. Like I want to hike,
Okay.
well, when I say that, like, I do like having the flexibility of doing what I want to do, and like
Right.
not
Well,
being,
right. Yeah.
and a lot of that has to do with the mileage. Like I like hiking pretty good chunks of, I mean, this past section hike I did, even before the last full day, I did a 44-mile day, because I just kind of got this wild hair and I turned 42 this year, and I thought, oh, it'd be cool to do 42 miles for my 42nd year. But even before I did that, I was hiking 22 or more over terrain that, is not super easy. I mean, I was going over Mount Rogers and,
Right. And it was hot. It's been hot
yeah,
this summer.
well, it wasn't hot when I was there, but it was just wet. Like we got rained on nonstop, and I got caught in a number of thunderstorms, and I was never above, I wasn't up at Grayson Highlands or anything, so that was good, but it was very wet. And I mean, even Warren Doyle, who you probably know has hiked the trail like 18 times, he came out and slack packed me that last day when I did 44. And I had been telling him how much it had been raining, and it poured that last night when I was finishing up my 44-mile day. And then the next morning he met me at one road crossing before my last stretch into Pearisburg. Well, it poured then too. And he was like, good grief. Like you weren't kidding. Like it really has been rain. I think so. When Warren had that response, I was like, all right, well, I don't feel like I don't know. I don't feel it. I'm not making this stuff up. Like it really has been a crazy week, very wet. So anyways.
All right. Well, the question is, Brew, do you carry an umbrella? Do you have one of those hiking umbrellas everybody's got?
I don't.
Okay, he's shaking his head no, everybody.
Well, that's a good question. So I think I probably would in a desert because of the heat. But the thing that I have these takeaways, like most of my section hikes, I feel like it's not something that maybe now I'll start setting out with this idea in mind. But when I finish every section hike, I have a big, like, one takeaway. Like this was my takeaway from this hike. So 2 years ago, to give you another example of a big one, I was in the Whites and in Maine, and because I didn't budget, I was just foolish, and I was trying to do 17-mile days through Western Maine and the Whites, and that's just not smart. I mean, it's like doing 25 or 27 or something everywhere else on the AT. But I didn't want to. So a lot of my experience too as a section hiker is based on like, well, I've got the kids at home, and I want to like kind of maximize my time and stay on the trail as much as possible rather than like putz around and, be in trail towns and stuff. I want to actually hike. So what I realized on that one was I could do 17 or 18 miles a day, or I think even more, a handful of times, and finish this section, or I could do it, slower, and I'll have to come back up here and do a 25 or 30-mile stretch. And because I'm, in the thick of it as a parent, I thought, well, let's just turn this into more of an endurance thing. And I'll treat it like I'll kind of kick my butt for these last 4 or 5 days. And and when you frame it that way and you shift it, then it's not like, oh, I feel like I'm like, I'm having to rush, or I'm always like behind the 8 ball here. It's like, no, this is great. Like I'm embracing it, and I love that.
Right.
So that was one thing, like what's your mindset going into it?
Well, and your objective too. Your objective. You have kids. You have a certain time frame,
Yeah.
and it's like, okay, now I'm going to shift over here, and this is what I want to do, kind of thing.
Yeah. And so I think that this time, I mentioned how much it rained this year, and the big realization was, wow, rain is really neat. Like rain isn't a negative. Rain is
Oh
just
no!
like, I mean,
I'm going to
lightning,
title this episode "Rain is Really Neat." That is awesome.
lightning is a negative, but the rain it cooled it off. It was refreshing. I mean, I think I just, for the first time, like, I looked at it, like, I just felt like I'd been conditioned by civilization to, like, not want to get wet because there's something weird about getting wet. And then when you don't really have a choice and you're like, well, you're going to get wet anyways. I mean, just try to keep your stuff dry, like try to keep your tent dry and your sleeping bag and whatever. That paradigm shift was really neat, and it freed me up to, like, not worry about getting wet. It was just like, that's okay. Like, so in a way they both had to do with, like, shifting your paradigm and your expectations, and realizing, like, this is turning a negative into a positive. But I think that there's something applicable, in Jen's parlance of the trail as a metaphor for life. Like, okay, well, what's the equivalent of rain? And is it really that negative? Like, is there a way you can look at this as, well, yeah, okay, it's raining, but it's cooling things off. I don't have to worry about water. It's not going to be, I'm not going to have a whole lot of dry sections where I can't, refill my
Right.
water bottle or whatever. So anyways, it's, yeah, I don't remember how I got onto the lesson thing.
Well, we were talking about, I mean, basically you learn every time you go out on a section hike, you learn some type of lesson or it teaches you something.
Yeah.
And in the whites, you learned, hey, you may not have wanted to do those miles, but based on what you want, the time frame you had out there and the kids at home and things like that, you just shifted your mind. And this time you decided, well, rain's really not that bad.
Yeah. And I think
it cools stuff off.
And part of, like, another neat part about that is, like, you can only really have a paradigm shift if you've got time to think about it and to, like, process it and see all the angles. And you don't always have that kind of time like you do on a section hike or a through hike, so that's cool too. Like, I don't know that, like, in my life I would have, been, like, I don't know, sitting on the deck or something with the kids and had that same thought about rain. Like, it, so I think it's really, really great to get away and have time to think like you do on a section hike, particularly when, the way that I was doing it, which was solo. You got a lot of time to think.
So listen, before I let you go here, because Brew has actually given us some of his time, but he still has kids at home and Jen's got things going on. So let me ask you this. People are going to want to know, are you like a guy that frets over it? So say, you're getting ready to go out on your section hike. Do you worry about your food and your gear? Or are you the kind of guy like the day before you're throwing your stuff together? So how are you because we know you're an organizer and we know you're a planner in one aspect of your life. Mm-hmm. How are you individually when you go out, when Brew goes out?
Well, I was laughing because, like, it's not just, oh, I'm throwing stuff together the day before. It's like I'm throwing stuff together at like 10:30 at night, when I'm going to turn around and wake up at 5 the next morning. Like, when I go by myself.
Okay, so you're not the spreadsheet guy that has, like, okay, I'm going to do this and this.
I don't have that luxury, Julie. Like, I feel like, I mean, like, I'm not, I think part of, for better or worse, like being a musician, like having that side of my brain is kind of the dominant side. And because I'm a good conversationalist, or I don't know, pretty creative. Like, I think good stuff happens, but it doesn't happen very often because of my spreadsheet. Because my spreadsheet, I'll try with the spreadsheet, but they don't look real good. They're not like, they're not like they're supposed to look. Yeah, no, Jen took a photo and posted it on Instagram before I left for my last section hike, where she was like mocking me and saying, like, I just have to bite my tongue whenever my husband packs. Because, you see these photos of, like, the guys that are, like, really organized and they've got their, like, Cliff Bars lined up and they're,
oh yeah, you're not that guy.
No, I mean, I usually am like scrambling and I'll run to the grocery store, right before, and I'll just grab stuff off the shelf. And on the plus side, like I rarely, if ever, forget something really essential. Like I've got it somehow in my brain is like, I know to bring extra batteries for my headlamp, or I know to, bring the thing that holds my phone charge or whatever.
Now, what about being like an ultra light kind of guy, or do you just carry what you want to carry kind of thing and don't worry about it?
I'm definitely not ultralight. I like to carry, I want my pack to be light. I want it to be, I don't like to carry a lot of extra pounds for sure. And I can't.
Well, it sounds like to me, you got to be pretty efficient because you're doing some miles out there.
I am. And really, I can't carry too much weight because I tore my ACL years ago, and it'll hurt my knee if I get over. I mean, I bet that even if I've got 5 days worth of food, my pack's probably not much over 25 pounds.
Okay.
But having said that, I also don't, I usually have a full sleeping pad, which I might change that. But I don't, I haven't been bringing a stove the last few times, although I might start doing the soaking stuff, like where you put, you get a jar and you put
brew. Come on.
That's a pretty ultralight thing to do, I think. But yeah, I just, I don't know. I think I like the idea of going as light as I can, but I also want to be comfortable. I'll usually bring a book. Like I read Slaughterhouse-Five in Virginia, and that was amazing. It was a good book to bring because it was really small.
Like the actual book?
Yeah, I brought the actual book.
Okay.
I've never done the Kindle thing I don't like looking at screens to read books. Like there's something more peaceful to me and more comfortable to turn pages and actually have pages. But yeah, I read Slaughterhouse-Five, but it was like, I looked at my bookshelf and I was like, okay, what book am I really interested in reading that's like the smallest book possible? And that was it. And so I bring that, and then I need something like that. Or sometimes I'll bring bourbon, which I don't know if you're supposed to on the trail because it's technically a park, but I'll, discreetly.
We won't tell anybody.
Right. I'm discreet with it. And I'm just having something to sip, but yeah, I like.
So would you say that that's your luxury item then?
Yeah. Those are my two luxury items. Definitely. Everything has a purpose, and a lot of them have two purposes because my hiking poles double for my tent and stuff like that. But I've never gone over into that hyper light place. It might be interesting to do. And now that I'm more doing stuff more with the hiking company, that's appealing, or that's more appealing because maybe I have more access to gear. But I've always been a believer in kind of what Warren Doyle has said at his Appalachian Trail Institutes, and for a long time, is like, the gear is not going to get you to Katahdin or to whatever trail you're doing. Like the gear is not going to get you to the end. You want to have good gear and you want to be comfortable, but it's like what's inside, it's not what's outside. Like, and I think that's really true. So I've never fixated on the weight thing too much, but I do, whenever we're in the shop, like I'll kind of ask people, particularly if they're getting into it a little bit older, I'll just emphasize the importance of you really want your pack to be fairly lightweight, because the more lightweight it is, the more comfortable you're going to be, and the more you're going to enjoy it. And, there's no, yeah. So that's an important thing. Weight's definitely important.
Well, Brew, believe it or not, it has been 45 minutes. We have been chatting here, and I feel like we could go on for at least another couple hours, but my editor, Steve Adams, will kill me. So
well, maybe next time we can run it back again some other time.
Yes. Will you please come back on again? I'm serious. Because we didn't even get into the ultra running. And real quick, you have got to talk about after your, I don't know, maybe I read this on Facebook. And Brew is also an ultra runner, so he runs 100-milers and all this crazy stuff. You actually wanted to do from Mount Pisgah in North Carolina to Mount Mitchell, and you finally did that. How many miles is that, and how long did it take you?
It was 65 miles, and it had 15,000 feet of gain, and it took me almost 24 hours. So I was nowhere near the FKT for that, but I knew.
What is it for
Oh
that?
gosh, it's like 12 something, 12:19. Yeah,
Whoa.
Sean Pope, and he lowered it a good bit. It had been like 13 and a half or something until a couple years ago, but I knew because of my knee and my torn ACL, and I was thrilled to finish it, and I knew I would need to go slowly if I was going to finish it, because if I'd gone fast on, particularly since the first almost 20 miles are downhill, that I would, downhills are a lot harder on bad knees than uphills are, actually. So I was so happy. And I mean, really multiple times a week. It's been about 5 weeks, I guess, since I finished Pitchell, and I still like, I genuinely am like, I can't believe I did that. Like, it's such a neat feeling, like such a neat thing to feel like I don't know, like you stole one, like you really got away with something a little bit. Cause I honestly thought I wouldn't ever have a chance to do it because I missed the window. I'm not really an ultra runner anymore. I mean, I might do some more stuff now that I have figured out how much hiking poles help me, and I don't go fast. I wrote an article. I don't think it's published yet, but I wrote an article for I Run Pharr, which is an ultra running online website.
Mm-hmm.
And so it'll be out in the next week or so, but it's all about like how it was like untraining, like I section hiked for my training. And so I didn't even train for this, really difficult thing.
There you go, ladies and gentlemen, a big plug for the section hiker. He section hiked for his That's awesome.
Yeah. And that was my theory that I sort of proposed to the folks that run that website was, ultra running is all about realizing that we can go farther than we think we can. And I guess what I'm wondering, or what I'm hypothesizing based on my section hike is, can we get to that place quicker than we thought we could? Like, can we get to that 100 miles or 65 miles? Like, could you just train? Could you just crank out a section hike? And let's say you normally run 18 or 20 miles a week for your training, and you want to do your first 50 miler. Well, go out and do 18 or 20 miles a day for 7 or 8 days in a row. And then you take 4 or 5 days off, just rest your legs, and then go out and run the race and see how you do. And you're not going to set a course record, but I bet your feet.
No, but you're going to get it done.
Yeah. Your feet and your legs are going to remember how you did what you did. And, so yeah, the Pitchell thing was amazing. And what was even neater is I raised, probably by now it's getting up closer to $4,000 for this.
Oh, wow.
This organization called Mercy Ships that I've supported for over a decade now. And it's basically a cruise ship that got converted into a hospital, and they travel around the west coast of Africa performing life-saving surgeries for people who don't have, medical access. And they've got a 60 Minutes piece that ran years ago about it. And it's a really wonderful organization. So mercyships.com, if you are interested in it.
Yes, I will add that to the show notes for sure.
So that was super cool that I raised a bunch of money. And the part of the reason why I did that was because because during COVID, I was thinking, man, people aren't making as much money in the US. They're not going to be donating as much money. Like, is there any way that I can try to help Mercy Ships and, these people in Africa that are going to be affected, like that whole trickle down thing. Anyway, it was a huge success. I was super happy. And I owe it all to my section hike.
That's right.
Yeah.
All right, Brew, how can people find your music? How can they find out more about you? If they want to purchase, I guess the book, is all of that on your website? Tell us what that is.
Yeah, my website is brewdavis.com. Brew like you brew beer or coffee. Brewdavis.com. It's nice to have an unusual name. But the music's there. It's on Spotify. I think it's on Apple Music, it's on a lot of the most popular places like Spotify where you find music. That's there. Jennifer's website is jenniferpharrdavis.com. She had a neat short film come out in the spring called Positive Forward Motion, that you can find on YouTube. And yeah, so those are our hiking company's website is blueridgehikingco.com, and we're doing guided tours still. And that's one of the fun parts about COVID is like people still are getting out and hiking, and we're taking all sorts of precautions to keep people safe, but we're still able to do it. And so come on up to Asheville if you want to, or Hot Springs, or anywhere in Western North Carolina, and we'll get you on the trail if you want to have a little getaway.
And he means it, people. He is grinning from ear to ear. I wish you guys could see him. So,
Yeah.
Brew, thank you very much for coming on the podcast. I really, really, really appreciate it.
Okay. Thanks, Julie. Y'all have a good one.
Just wanted to share with all of you that Brew and I did continue to talk more after we finished recording, and he agreed to definitely come back on the podcast and chat more with us in the future. If there is one thing we learned about Brew, he is all about supporting what he believes in from his family, his friends, musicians, and charities. Like Brew said, if you have musician friends, reach out and offer support. All of Brew's information will be in the show notes, and if you don't have musician friends, why not download a song or two of Brew's? As always, everybody, thanks for listening. Happy section hiking. And we close out today with a song from Brew from his second album, Another Scarecrow, Learning How to Fly.
Devil's filling up my ear with china plates and chandeliers and the sweetest lies you've ever heard. Ain't it just like in my dreams, traded all for magic beans, and I wonder, will I ever learn? In a world of my own, my wisdom is in short supply, even as the voices fill the air. All the starlings murmurate, as for me I hesitate and fall into a state of disrepair. They're calling to me from the other side. I'm another scarecrow learning how to fly. Fiddle song, what could possibly go wrong as the shadows drift along the lane? We're all digging in the mines, you get yours and I'll get mine, in these caverns measureless to name. London calling, purple rain pulling on my apron strings, fill that purse with pocket change tonight. Me, I ain't yet giving in this world I'm living in, 'cause I know the future's out of sight. They're calling to me from the other side. I'm another scarecrow learning how to fly. To me from the other side. I'm another scarecrow learning how to fly. I'm another scarecrow learning how to fly. I'm another scarecrow learning how to fly.
At Grainger, we're for the ones who pay attention to every little detail, the ones who fuss, tinker, and sweat the small stuff. Because you know the tiniest thing can make the biggest difference when it comes to keeping business moving. We get it. We're the same way, offering access to product experts to help you quickly and easily find what you need. So whatever your industry, you know you're always getting professional-grade products. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.